Welcome back to MyFinJourney. Today's guest is Laura Rolfe, CEO of Mint Franchise Consultants, where she helps aspiring entrepreneurs evaluate franchise and business ownership opportunities with more clarity and confidence. Laura works with people who are considering leaving the traditional career path, buying a franchise, building a family-aligned business, or even franchising their existing company. She also mentors and trains new franchise consultants as part of FranServe's leadership team. And she also runs her own podcast, which I'm sure she'll run into more as we chat. For the MyFinJourney audience, this episode is about ownership, but not in a romanticized way. Franchising can be a powerful path to business ownership, but only if the model, the capital requirement, the operator fit, and the risk profile actually makes sense. Laura, welcome to MyFinJourney.
Thank you so much for having me on your show, Mustafa, to talk about financial independence, growth, and ownership.
No, it's our pleasure. Laura, I'd love to understand, how did you get to where you are today?
I come from a family of entrepreneurs, so that really set the stage. I didn't know it at the time, but growing up, my parents owned a Coors beer distributorship, so many people are familiar with that. And I saw the hard work as well as the freedom and flexibility of being small business owners, and how my parents were able to be present for my sister and I growing up. My grandparents also had an independent business, construction company in Colorado. So I think I caught the entrepreneur bug early. It just took me a little while to get here. I spent 25 years working in nonprofit. So one of my core values is changing the lives of others. When working in nonprofit, change the lives of others through raising money for programs, services, and research for different health states. And then COVID was really kind of a pivotal time for me in my career, where donations and nonprofits were down significantly. I found myself laid off, and do I want to go work for somebody else, or do I want to follow that entrepreneurial spirit of family members before and start something of my own? So I did look at several different franchise opportunities. I didn't know that a franchise consultant was available to help guide my journey to looking at business ownership. I did speak with friends and family who were also entrepreneurs who own their own business. So I did kind of my due diligence and my thought process, and ended up landing as starting a franchise consulting business. So I started Mint Franchise Consultants in 2020, and it has been so rewarding talking with individuals who are looking at starting something of their own, but following a proven business model through franchising, and helping to match them to the right fit business opportunity and help them with resources along the way, funding, etc., to help guide them to become business owners themselves.
I love that, Laura. Very, very succinct. There was a lot of, high value things that you mentioned that I want to kind of rewind and really unpack. You mentioned growing up that your parents had their own franchise, a part of Coors Light, correct? Or
Coors
Coors in general.
Light,
Coors
Rocky
Coors in
Mountain.
I don't know that much about alcohol, to be honest with you. It's not an area of expertise of mine, but they owned a franchise. You mentioned that it was hard work, but it was also very rewarding. It also gave them, free time, so to speak, I think is how you worded it.
Yes.
Help the listener understand, because a lot of people typically they have a 9 to 5 job, maybe they work 8 to 10, right? Like some people put in a lot of work more than just the traditional 9 to 5, and others maybe just clock in and clock out. And that's not meant with judgment or anything. It's just meant as factual. So how can you be working hard and have a lot of free time in your business? I really want to help. I want the listener to really understand that mindset as it played out, when you were growing up as a child.
When you work for somebody else, you follow somebody else's rules, their systems. You know what the expectation is. If you're working 9 to 5 hours, and you might have an hour for lunch break and 15 minutes breaks in the morning and the afternoon, but you have that expectations of when you need to be at your place of employment, either in person or in today's world remotely. The freedom and flexibility that my parents had was, if you're the business owner, you might have employees that can take over the roles and responsibilities when you're stepping away from the business for a vacation, or if you have more control over your schedule. So if you had a parent-teacher conference at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you don't have to ask your boss for time off to go to a parent-teacher conference. Or let's say you want to coach Little League for your son, or be involved in other activities for your kids. You get to create your own schedule and have that freedom and flexibility to work around other areas of your life. So I work with a lot of clients who they're tired of that clock in, clock out. They're really good at whatever they do, following the systems of a job, a traditional job. And rather than making money for their employer and getting those maybe 3 or 5 or 8% pay increases on an annual basis, having employee reviews or whatnot, they want to take their transferable skills into building something of their own, and also get the rewards of that freedom and flexibility of, well, I can take a Friday afternoon off to take a long weekend with my family, and I might have to just put in more hours into my business during the week. Or I hire employees myself if I'm the business owner, who can take some of the responsibilities. I can delegate responsibilities, and I have a little more freedom and flexibility in my life to build something of my own. And if you are in a franchise system, if you can follow a proven business model, follow the guidelines, then you can be successful in building something of your own with that freedom and flexibility of the time.
And for you, Laura, it feels like you went from working that 9 to 5 to running your own business. From your perspective as an individual, from your perspective anecdotally from helping others, how empowering is it to go from that 9 to 5 to running your own business? Or is it just like more stress than it's worth?
Well, it can be very scary. And I'm worried about any clients that I work with that fear doesn't enter into the equation, because you're betting on yourself. So rather than betting on yourself with a job and getting feedback from a boss and the systems that are part of your employment, you are using your transferable skills to invest in something of your own. And with that, there's always risk, but in franchising, 90% of franchise owners are still in business after 5 years. And so if you can, again, follow a proven business model and are willing to take that risk, the rewards are tenfold. You can scale a business, you can scale a single location, you can scale into owning multiple territories and multiple markets. On my podcast this week, I talked about a couple of franchise owners who started with 1 or 3 or 5 locations and have scaled to billion-dollar empires owning multiple franchise brands. I have a client, my very first placement, Damaso in Florida, who started with his first brick and mortar location with Batteries Plus Bulbs. He now owns 5 Batteries Plus Bulbs locations in Florida. So he took a risk on himself, but he had the support of his wife and his family, and he knew because of his military background that he could be successful in this. He saw himself in that. So hopefully that answers your question, Mustafa.
It does. It does, Laura. What I would ask is from your perspective, you mentioned this gentleman who served in the army. From your perspective, what qualities do you think a person needs to be successful as a franchise owner or as a entrepreneur in general?
I do think that you need to have your own strong work ethic, determination, and drive. You need to be willing to bet on yourself. And it's always great that you have the support of a spouse or other family members to support you, because things are great when they're great, but it takes a little bit of lift to start a business. So there are going to be long hours, there are going to be hard days or hard weeks, and so you have to know yourself well enough that you can get through those. So just like owning a franchise, you follow proven systems. The discovery process is also set up for you to really make an informed decision before you ever invest a penny into your own business. So my process is we typically have an initial intake conversation. I learn more about why somebody's looking at business ownership for themselves. Had they looked at business ownership before? Um, what is their skill set and background? And then we talk about different types of business opportunities that I think are recession resistant, inflation resistant, that have a path for growth, that align with whatever their business and investment goals are. We then narrow it down to one or two franchises for them to go through a discovery process. Most discovery processes are anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks. There's a series of conversations, not only with me, but also with the franchise that they're looking at. We review legal documents. Franchises are governed by the Federal Trade Commission. So we look at legal documents like franchise disclosure documents. They're same 23 items, whether you're an Anytime Fitness, a Batteries Plus Bulbs, a McDonald's, a plumbing company, a painting company, etc. They just look different for each of those. Um, Candidates also have an opportunity to speak with current franchise owners, people who've already invested in that system, and can ask them any questions that they like. What does a good day look like? What does a tough week look like? How quick till you are profitable, so people can start seeing themselves in the business or not seeing themselves in a business. So that helps them move through those fears. And then typically, we talk about funding, resources, etc. And then the final decision-making process is usually a discovery day or a confirmation day where you meet with the team that's going to support you in your business. Do you like them? Do you feel like they could help you be successful as a business owner? Do they like you and feel that you would be successful in their business model? And then you mutually agree to move forward with that business and launch your business. So it's very thoughtful in the process to become a franchise owner. You don't just go and buy a franchise off a shelf. You have processes in place to make that decision, and you can incorporate family members in that process if you like. So you're not doing it in a vacuum. And then my role as a consultant, I provide resources along the way. Questions that I would ask during the validation process. What should I be expecting from the call with the CEO of that franchise system? How should I review a franchise disclosure document? I can introduce you to franchise attorneys that can help you really dig in and see if there are any red flags that you should be aware of before signing that franchise agreement and paying a franchise fee.
I love that, Laura. I want to take a pause for a second because Laura's dropping a lot of insight into franchising, and sometimes all the insight we have is just like ChatGPT AI slop. So if you're listening to this episode, if you're enjoying it, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and share it with a friend who's been talking about buying a franchise or who's been thinking about buying a franchise, because this Laura might be the one person who can help that friend of yours. So, Laura, you've mentioned a lot of different things that I want to touch on. You mentioned the idea of discovery. You alluded to an 8 to 12 week period. I want to dive deeper there in a bit. You mentioned, recession resistant and interest rate resistant. You didn't touch on AI resistant. So, I want to kind of understand your perspective on how AI is impacting the franchising space. You also touched on the idea that it takes time. It takes time to find the right franchise, to find the right franchise fit. And you also mentioned the idea that you specialize in being a consultant for people looking to buy a franchise, but also it felt like you kind of stumbled upon that and didn't maybe know what you didn't know and didn't know that this market existed. Like you might have known that franchising existed, but maybe not that there are people out there that can help you pick the right franchise. So I want to start there, Laura. In that process of discovery, in that process of learning what you didn't know, obviously COVID was happening. It was a tough time for everybody. Um, everyone was learning a different skill in COVID, as I'm sure you're aware. And there's no better skill than learning new ways to make money, from my perspective. So for you, how exactly did you come across this and decide, hey, instead of buying a franchise, I'm going to teach people how to buy a franchise?
Great question. So I, like many people do, go online and started my own research. I'm a smart woman. I've had a very successful career, climbed the corporate ladder myself in the nonprofit sense. So went online and started inquiring. I was interested in senior care franchises. So submitted a few inquiries and didn't realize
So
that
something like a Sunrise.
sort of like, so Google searched and then ran across, home helpers or any number of senior care brands. I researched them, I looked at their websites, and then I submitted my inquiry. Didn't realize that there was a franchise consultant behind many of my inquiries, not all of them. Sometimes I talk directly with the brand, but the brands like working with consultants because we provide added value of additional resources the brands don't have time to share with a, somebody who's looking at their particular business, or they know that some people might not be a fit for their business. So I screen, I make sure that somebody is a good fit financially, background. Are they going to be an owner operator? Are they going to be semi involved in their business? Do they have the money, the liquid capital available to invest in a particular business model? So as a consultant, I ran into a bunch of consultants when I was looking doing my franchise search. So that's how I learned that franchise consultants were a thing. Franchise consultants are very similar to like a real estate agent. Everybody knows what a real estate agent is. They help you buy or sell a house. So if you're looking to buy a house, you might know you want a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in Dallas, Texas. Well, Dallas is a really big market. So where in Dallas do you want your house? So you'll have those conversations with your realtor and they'll see which neighborhoods or which schools you might want to be a part of when you're looking for a house. And then they'll bring in a home inspector, a mortgage lender, etc. So people can equate with realtors. As a franchise consultant, we do very similar work. And I learned this when I was looking at franchises myself, that a franchise consultant is going to ask you, where do you want your business? How much do you have to invest in a business? I don't want to show you a $3 million storage facility franchise if your budget is more in line with a $200,000 or a $500,000 business investment. We talk about scalability, exit strategies. How, are you replacing a $250,000 a year income? And what might that look like in the short term and the long term? How are you going to fund the business? So we have a lot of those conversations. So back to your question of how did I find out that franchise consultants were even a thing? I had some really good ones that I talked to early on. And then I had some that just kind of didn't really provide any value to me. They had a warm, quick 10-minute call with me and then passed me along to the franchise system, and I never talked to them again. So I want to be the one who provides value. And there's lots of us that do provide value. So I'm not the only franchise consultant. You can search for us on Google or AI or on LinkedIn, but I do pride myself in what I do and getting to know the franchisors and franchisees of the best franchise opportunities.
I love that, Laura. I love that because sometimes paths aren't linear. Sometimes, you have a situation where you have a job, you have a lot of stability. You look at maybe a W-2 9 to 5 job and think, hey, I'm going to be here for a long term. Like how long were you in the nonprofit space?
25 years. And I thought I was going to retire in that space. I was very successful, but the you had mentioned AI and how that comes into play. And I just want to touch on our world is ever changing. Nobody expected COVID to change the landscape of corporate America or nonprofit America. Nobody expected it. So people ended up working from home, or they were part of layoffs or rifts, or they decided they didn't want to work anymore. So COVID changed a lot of things. And then we saw tariffs in the more recent years impacting businesses and causing belt tightening of different industries. And so people, again, found their roles change. We're also seeing more people who are being asked to go back into a physical office space. AI is eliminating positions, eliminating jobs. I was talking to somebody yesterday who a whole department is going to be wiped out because they're going to have AI take over some of the roles and responsibilities. So we can't necessarily predict the next thing that's going to impact business or our job in a corporate 9 to 5 type of business. And that's kind of a scary thing if you're an employee. So I'm seeing a rise in people interested in taking control of their financial future by investing in themselves through business ownership. There's no guarantee investing in yourself, but we can control a lot more things when we're in charge than if somebody else is in charge of, HR and which department is going to be axed next. Also in the AI realm of things, we lean into AI as Mint franchise consultants. We have a weekly Monday post that we post on all our social media channels that's called AI in the AM. So how do you lean into AI to help you find a business if that's your role or goal? How do you lean into AI to be a better business owner, whether you're a franchise owner, an independent business owner, or you have some side hustle? How do you lean into AI? Because it's not going away. It's continually improving upon itself. So don't be afraid of it. A lot of franchisors are leaning into AI as well. AI in home service types of jobs. Kind of at first I was like, I don't know how I like this, but there's a support system called Rilla. And Rilla helps, like, let's say you have a plumbing franchise and your plumber goes in to fix a garbage disposal in somebody's home. The plumber may say, I noticed that you have hard water in your system. Have you ever considered a water softener? So Rilla will record the plumber and the actions, and there may be an opportunity to help train that plumber to look at other opportunities where you can serve that homeowner and also benefit the franchisee with making more money because you're upselling them, and then benefit the plumber because the plumber might get additional perks or advances because they're doing more work in a single house. So Rilla is an AI tool to do that. There are other AI softwares that are automating scheduling or routes for, let's say you have a pet grooming business. You want to maximize the time grooming pets and not maximize the windshield time, meaning the driving time in between those grooming appointments. So AI is a tool that can benefit business owners as well. So how do we smartly do that? And we don't have time today to discuss and go deep on all of those, but definitely worth having conversations.
For you, Laura, you mentioned that it takes time. You've alluded to some of the few tasks that it does take. You've also mentioned that the process of discovery takes 8 to 12 weeks. Help me understand, Laura, if I was tuning into this episode, if I was zooming out, why does the process take so long? Is it just start with a lack of inner clarity, or is it just that there's just so many opportunities out there that we have to really find the dime in the rough for Mustafa to be able to execute on versus a diamond in the rough for Laura?
The Federal Trade Commission governs franchising. All franchises must register a franchise disclosure document. Those are hefty documents. They're anywhere from 150 to 600 pages long. The Federal Trade Commission requires that candidates have that franchise disclosure document, or FDD, for a minimum of 14 days. So you can sign a franchise agreement on day 15. So you can do it in 2 weeks and a day, but it's usually a big investment in investing in a business. So we want to make sure that it's an informed investment process. It's not like you look at a stock and say, oh, I think this is trending upwards. I'm going to buy or sell and own that stock on the next trading day. We want to make sure that you are understanding your roles and responsibilities as the business owner. You understand what the obligations are through the federal, that you have an opportunity to speak with current franchise owners, and maybe you don't need to do any of that. So on day 15, you could sign the franchise agreement. The quickest I've taken somebody through the process is 21 days. And then I have people who are in and out and in and out, and their fear continues to kick in, or they haven't found the right business. And 2 years later, they finally decide what decision they're going to make. So it's a process, but it's not cookie cutter based on every single person is going to take 2 months to just go through discovery, because it does take time. because it's a big financial investment. And if we're looking at funding options for your business as well, if you're writing a check and you're self-funding, that's quick. But if you're going an SBA loan route, those take anywhere from 30 to 90 days, depending upon the type of business and the amount. If you're looking at a rollover for business startup, a ROBS, which is taking your K dollars and reallocating them without tax consequence to invest in your business, those can take typically 3 or 4 weeks. So it's a process.
It's interesting, Laura, when you break it down, because it started with, hey, we want to make sure people are informed. And the idea of being informed, sounds good. Everyone wants to be an informed consumer, buyer, investor, franchise owner. So there's no pushback there. But then it's like, what is the process of informing, which obviously you've mentioned, but it's to say that that person who took maybe 21 days versus that person who has maybe analysis paralysis, if you were to narrow it down to 3 skills that you think people need in life to be successful, however you define success, like what would those 3 characteristics look like? And would that person be closer to 21 days, or would they be closer to analysis paralysis in the process of actually buying a franchise?
You need to be willing to bet on yourself. Confidence in yourself, I think, is very important. You have to be well capitalized, meaning you don't have to come to the table with all of the money for the business. A 10% cash injection for a home-based business, 20 to 30% for a brick and mortar. But you don't want to invest in a business and 6 months later you run out of money and you have to close your doors. So we want to make sure that you have the investment level. And we want to make sure that whatever your idea of business ownership, are you going to be an all-in owner operator as the CEO of your business and be involved in the day-to-day operations, not the plumber or the salesperson or the person flipping hamburgers. We want you to build an empire. So are you going to be an owner operator involved in your business daily? Are you going to be semi-involved, meaning hiring a general manager to manage your business? So we want some clarity around the type of business that you're going to own. And that can help with the process too. So we talk about that early and we reframe and see if any of that changes as we go through discovery. But if you're well capitalized, you believe in and bet on yourself, and you have a clear understanding of the type of business model that you're interested in, then the process can go pretty quickly and pretty smoothly.
I love it, Laura. Laura, I have 2 more questions for you. The first one's a 2-part question, so technically I have 3 more questions for you. You're mentioning that the goal is to set somebody up so that they're able to scale. So I wanted to understand, part 1, maybe how long does it take to scale? But also, more generally or more importantly, like, what does that scaling look like from your perspective? Is it that the franchise you bought from some guy who has 10 years experience running the franchise or whatever it is, it's an established location, established franchise that you're buying, you're going to magically improve efficiency day one because you're God's gift to mankind? Or is it that you're going to learn the franchise and maybe improve that franchise? Or is it maybe another option of, hey, you're going to learn this franchise, this location, and open another location? Help us understand what scaling looks like from your perspective as an expert in helping people start a franchise or buy an existing franchise.
Well, I think those are 2 things to unpack. People can certainly invest in an existing business, one that has scaled. Maybe the franchise owner who owns it currently is retiring, or life happens and they're moving in a different direction. So we do talk about exit strategies when you invest in a business with me. So that you're looking at doing an LOI and NDAs and funding and due diligence. So that process takes a bit of time to buy an existing business. And there's 3 types of businesses you can buy. You can buy an underperforming business that you can go and turn around, that the current owner hasn't really done a whole lot with, or they've stepped back and don't really have anybody running the show. Those are usually a good deal, but take a little more work. There's businesses that are doing well, but they're not at like churning and making a ton of profit yet, but they're break even. And then there's those high performing locations that are doing really, really well. So you're buying that business and the success that comes with that business. So it's a little easier to plug and play. Those are harder to find because a lot of people want those plug and play, just be a cash cow for me. I just want something that's easy to invest in. But your employee that you are inheriting with purchasing that business could walk away. So you need to have some knowledge of that business. The franchisee or business owner may stay involved in that business for 3 to 6 months, but the customer may really like the current owner and they don't know you as the new owner. So the customers go away because the owner went away. So there's some things, some nuances with resales, certainly ones that we can overcome, but they're not as simple and easy as some social media giants are making it sound. Like you can't go buy a car wash or a laundromat and, in 4 years retire at the age of 30 making millions of dollars. People do it, but it's hard. If otherwise everybody would do it. And then kind of the second part of that process is, if you're looking at an existing business, or if you're looking at white space or new territory, there's a few ways that you can grow your business. You can grow it on day one. I have a dear friend of mine who just invested in 5 territories, owns half of Phoenix metro area with his new franchise. Just went through training 6 weeks ago. He has a vision to scale quickly. So he's invested in, I think, 4 vans for his business. He's hired 3 employees already, and he opens on Monday. So he's got this vision already of I'm going to scale big. And AI told him how to do it. So he leaned into AI on how he was going to scale from day one because he's 60 years old and he wants to do it fast. But the more traditional approach is you invest in 1 or 3 territories, you build that over the course of time, and then maybe you add additional locations or additional territories on year 1, 3, 5, etc. of the same brand. So if you go an inch wide and a mile deep, you can be really successful of getting to know that one thing really well and implementing that business plan very well. Others want to stack businesses. So you might have a painting franchise and your customer is, a homeowner. So what are some businesses that you could stack on that? Maybe it's a landscaping business or a roofing business or a kitchen remodel business. So you're selling to the same customer over and over different services. The customer knows you, and so they're going to continue to come back to you for other services for their home or business.
I love that, Laura. I also loved the way you summarized it. And you said an inch wide and a mile deep. It's very eloquent because I think that's where the most money is made, by being hyper specific and knowing something very well. That way you're able to create a lot of alpha, a lot of value for people, and ultimately monetize off that value. Laura, I feel like the conversation's going well. I know we both have different time commitments. I did want to go deeper, but I think in the interest of time, what we'll do is we'll just simply say, what is the best way to reach out to you to really drive that conversation further? If somebody's listening to this and they're saying, hey, I really want to unpack maybe what the capital requirements are. Maybe I want to start to understand what that discovery process looks like. Maybe I already own a franchise and I want to figure out how to scale, and maybe AI is not telling me what I need to know because it doesn't have the subject matter expertise that Laura has, right? So Laura, ultimately what I'm trying to understand is, what is the best way for the listener to reach out to you?
There's a couple of ways. You can certainly visit our website, mintfranchiseconsultants.com. We have a lot of resources that are available on that website, as well as a booking link if you'd like to book a call with me or my partner, Kate. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. I post a lot of content on LinkedIn. Laura Rolfe, Rolfe. You can Google me. You can find me out there and find my podcast as well. But would love to connect with you. My services are always free. Never hurts to have that initial conversation, and we can see where it goes, if business ownership is your path or not. So thanks again for hosting me on your podcast, Mustafa.
No, it's been my pleasure, Laura. Laura, what I would say is, this is a very nice conversation. It's a very nice first look for some people into franchising and into the value of franchising. You mentioned early on that maybe 90% of franchises are still operating and still, I assume, profitable 5 years after a person starts. The stats for a business are like the exact opposite. So it's one of those situations where if you wanted to get into entrepreneurship but maybe didn't know where to start, maybe it makes sense to reach out to Laura. It makes sense to see what else is out there. And ultimately, you don't know what you don't know. I loved how, Laura, you've been able to dive really deep and give that depth of wisdom for people. So I guess the takeaway is simple. Don't just buy a franchise because it sounds easy. Study the model, spend the time, reach out to somebody like Laura to really understand that process of self discovery, understand what you're looking for, to understand which franchise would be the right fit for you. It's not just about the numbers. Laura mentioned that when she said, hey, you might buy a franchise and the customers were associated or attached to the previous owner. So you want to understand, maybe key man risk. You want to understand what else is going on under the hood to really say, does this franchise fit into your life and your goals? If you're that 60-year-old gentleman buying the franchise and wanting to grow aggressively, make sure it's the right franchise that can scale aggressively. So Laura, like you mentioned, we'll include all of your links in the show notes. To the listener, if you like this episode, hit the subscribe button, smash the like button, leave a review, and most importantly, share it with somebody else who's looking at entrepreneurship and maybe they haven't thought of franchising. Thanks again, guys, and until next time, bye.
Thank you.